Hello and welcome once again to Crazy
Who,
Comics.
who are you? And why are you on my lawn? Get off my lawn! Damn kids, where's my government check? Wait, Cory, is that you?
Yes.
What? Oh, podcasting. That's right. It's been, what, 3 weeks since we actually did this?
Well, for you, it's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
For me, it's never ending.
Never ending.
It's your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard.
And he is old, you know.
And at
And
the
charming.
other end of the series of
And a
tubes
rat
and wires,
bastard.
shot out of a cannon,
Kaboom!
Crazy Joe Crazy Rider.
You can just call me Joe. Rider goes a little higher.
Actually, we could
Actually, I don't want the word.
We could call you Ray, or we could
No.
call you Jay, or
Jay.
we could call you Ray.
Oh, there's a J. Ray J, yeah.
Your name is Raymond J. Johnson Jr.
Doesn't have to call me Johnson.
I can't believe that guy had that gimmick, and that was pretty much the only gimmick he had. And he milked that for over 40 years.
Good for him. See, kids, there are ways to stay off welfare. You just got to figure it out.
Let's see here. I'm pulling him up. His actual name was Bill Saluga.
Saluga.
He was born in 1937. He is still alive. But the Raymond J. Johnson Jr. gimmick started in the early 50s.
Oh, good grief.
In the late 70s, he showed up on all sorts of things, including a run on the Miller Lite commercials, Johnny Carson. Anytime Red Fox had a TV show, Saluga would be on it. He was on Tom Jones, Laugh-In, the David Steinberg Show.
I think he would show up on a lot of those 70 variety shows at least once or twice. Because I do recall one, and I don't know what show, but he would launch into his routine, and the audience would go along with, say along with him.
Oh, yeah. And that was pretty much his bit.
Did he
would
do any
show
commercials?
Up. He did commercials for Miller Lite.
I thought so.
Then he did Anheuser-Busch Light, otherwise known as Natural Light or Natty Light, which is Natty Light is what you buy if you can't afford Miller Lite. But I'm looking, and that was almost the only bit he did. He was part of the Trucking Company comedy troupe. Did stand up, but no one remembers him for anything other than the Raymond J. Johnson Jr. bit, which Bob Dylan actually stole for a song. In the song, You Gotta Serve Somebody, he says, you can call me Terry, you can call me Timmy, you can call me Bobby, or you can call me Zimmy. You could call me anything, but no matter what you say, you're going to have to serve somebody.
So what have you been doing for 3 weeks?
Work. Watching some TV, reading some comics, reading some novels. But I hate to say it, but at the office job, things have slowed down. At the group home job, it never slows down. Wrestling has been very busy, including a bombshell dropped over the last week or so.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they turned a shoot into a work. We'll get to that when we get to Freaking and Geeking. And there was a pay-per-view over the weekend. Got another pay-per-view for AEW in about a month or so, where they team up with New Japan Pro Wrestling that I am giddy as a schoolgirl over. But you have been recovering from getting your gut sliced up.
Yep. It was a piece of cake. Compared to hips, this was a piece of cake. And I got to show my scar to two fairly attractive nurses today who gave me the ultimate blessing. I said, well, we got to look at your scar. And I'm like, well, with the doctor, he's like, drop your pants. But with the nurses, one of them's a surgeon's assistant. So I don't know if she's, I've pulled out actually. Do I got her card with me? I don't know when the last time you went into a doctor. Nope, she's a PAC, whatever that is. But when I went in, the first thing they do is they ask me if they mind, like, because there's always somebody interning, and do you mind if they come in? And so she came in, and she's like, okay, I need to see your scar. And I'm like, okay. I said, do you want the full Monty, or should I just show enough so you can see the scar? And she said, just enough. I said, do you want a gown? And I said, no, I'm over 55. Modesty is a thing of the past. So, and then of course and you where the slices, you didn't have to show any of the giblies. But then the surgical assistant came in and showed, and everything's healing fine. I've had a couple, zings where I had to like double up oxycodone, but for the most part, I mean, I've had hips done. This is a walk in the park. About the only real bummer is that because I had to be off my rheumatoid meds, it's slightly flaring up a little bit. But I'm back on them, so hopefully I can tamp that back down. So I still haven't been lifting stuff. They did say, just slowly work on it. Technically, I got a 10-pound limit, but since work has it where I can't go back to 100%, I'm still off work, which is fine. I mean, we've been moving stuff around the house. I actually got all my graphic novels in my man cave downstairs, or as Chris calls it, my man mess. And I've been able to, move enough and dig up enough where I can pretty much access almost anything. Sometime this weekend, I'll probably activate that phone app, CLC, I think it's called, and start actually tracking what the heck I've got in my comic collection. So, matter of fact, if anything, I am kind of antsy because I haven't geeked in since Free Comic Book Day. And it kills me because I'm on these Facebook groups and you're seeing these guys. Oh, I went over, some guy went and dropped $1,000 at Midway Books and said he found such awesome deals because they have no idea what they got. They don't go back and price anything. And yeah, I don't know if I'd have bought it, but it just makes you wonder. Because there's also people that are like, yeah, when I was there, they were like, we don't want to show you anything. So it makes me think that maybe one of these days we should do a prolonged look at Midway Books and maybe get into the basement and dig through it. But then again, you and I have been collecting since the 70s, so this might be a younger person. But it gets me antsy,
And have you heard about Remix?
What are you talking about? We've been to Remix.
Yeah, he just posted something recently.
Usually what they do is a lot of stuff with records. And he just announced he's been putting, because what he does, he's got a lot of comics, but he doesn't have a lot of space. And so he's been slowly putting stuff up. And it was usually my goal to visit him at least once a month. If anything, to dig through his dollar boxes. But until I was ready to get down low and be able to bend and everything, I hadn't gone. And of course, he just ended up posting a bunch of stuff. And I'm looking at the books like, I want that. I don't want anybody to go to Remix. He's my store, not yours. No, seriously. Tim's a good guy. Get up there. I want to get down to Mind's Eye. I want to get over to Issues Needed. It's just, I've got, I don't need to buy anymore because I'm still wading through what I got. And we'll talk more when we get to the eBay side of things. But I've been putting tons of stuff on eBay. And I'm kind of like, you know what? Until I get my funds built up enough where I can blow money indiscriminately. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be good, Cory. I haven't been. We'll talk about that when we get to what I bought on eBay. But big news, I hear. Big news.
Yep, big news in comics. On Monday, which was a holiday, Joe Quesada announced that after 22 years at Marvel, and further back, if you remember that he was in charge of Marvel Knights, which I think was 97, that he is stepping down from his corporate position. He is going to be doing something else. He did show that he's working on a Marvel comic that's coming out later this year. He was editor at Marvel Knights. Then when Bob Harris, I'm not going to be kind about it because he shit the bed. The X-Men movie came out. Before the X-Men movie came out, the board of directors at Marvel said, we want books in bookstores. And because it was a Fox movie, Fox partnered with Marvel and said, we're going to give you 20 pages in TV Guide. Back when TV Guide meant something, back when TV Guide was still selling millions of copies. And there were no trade paperbacks in bookstores. They did those 3 preview $5.99 comics.
Which was really stupid. Because, again, I had Hot Comics at the time. People would come in wanting to see X-Men comics, and they'd see what were regular comics back then.
$1.99.
Yeah, and then, like, you're trying to explain, well, they have big continuity, kind of like soap operas. But these are tied into the movies, and they look at, like, wait a minute, these are $1.99, these are $5.99? Yeah, no.
Well, and then that X-Men story in TV Guide was incomprehensible.
I don't even think I remember it.
And it was only part of a story. It's, you want the rest? You have to pick up this issue of Uncanny X-Men for... And I remember Mark Waid at the time had gone to him and said, here's an idea for an X-Men introduction story. No. The people who work on the regular X-Men comic are going to do it, and it's going to tie in with the continuity. And I had quit reading the X-Men after Age of Apocalypse. But hey, the X-Men are going to be in TV Guide. I picked it up. I couldn't make heads or fucking tails out of the story at all.
Yeah, it doesn't even... I don't know if I have that issue. I have a ton of TV Guides floating around. I'll have to dig through, see if I still have it. But
so
yeah, it didn't do me any favors. I don't even recall Marvel calling or contacting me and saying, hey,
no,
we're referring you this issue through TV Guide. Be sure to order more.
Yeah. And he got called in front of his bosses, and they asked, well, what the hell? And he talked about, well, we want to sell the regular comics, and, we want to make people into coming in every Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is, everybody at Marvel at the time knew about it too. They basically told him, we told you to have books for new readers in bookstores when this movie hit. There weren't any. You didn't have it. I mean, they didn't have the Phoenix story in print. They didn't have any of the Masterworks in print. They had nothing in print at the time, especially because Marvel's trade paperbacks, except for Marvel Knights, they treated them like regular comics. Okay, we're putting it out. You don't, sorry, if you didn't order it on Wednesday, well, we only print to order. Sorry, Charlie. Do we put them in bookstores? No, we don't have connections in bookstores. Why would we do that? Well, because DC's making a fortune on those Sandman books. Yeah.
Now, before we get any further, remember, this is not Quesada we're talking about.
Yeah, this is Bob Harris. Now, over at Marvel Knights, which was a deal a lot like the Image deal, where Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti had their own company called Event Comics, and Marvel went to him and said, hey, we'd like you to package some books for us. And they got Kevin Smith to do Daredevil and all these other series, and they were packaged as not just regular comics, but hey, Guardian Devil, that's going to be a 10-issue story by Kevin Smith, trade paperback. Each comic they did would be between 6 and 10 issues long, trade paperback. And the comics were selling good, but the trade paperbacks were where they were making the money. So Marvel fired Bob Harris, put in Joe Quesada because Joe Quesada was focusing on the trade paperback market. Bill Jemas, who had also been brought in, he came over from the toy line, Toy Biz, and remember that, what was it? Either Marvel bought Toy Biz or Toy Biz bought Marvel, but they had been crammed together. And that's when you started, there's going to be a Spider-Man movie. Well, crap. Let's put together a bunch of Spider-Man trade paperbacks and let's start this line called the Ultimate line that will restart Spider-Man so that we could get out trade paperbacks that tell Spider-Man stories that aren't bogged down by 40 years of continuity. And that's what they did with Ultimate X-Men. And that's what they did with Ultimate Avengers. And those were all so that when somebody would go to a movie and then go to the bookstore, I want to read an X-Men book. Oh, here's one. Do I have to have read 40 years of X-Men to understand what's going on? Nope, I could just read this. Same with Spider-Man, same with Avengers. Now, it kind of went off the rails 5 or 6 years in, but by then Quesada wasn't editor-in-chief anymore. And the other thing he did, and old-time fans got furious with him about this. He said, we need to fix these books. First book we're going to fix is the X-Men. And he had Grant Morrison come in. And he told Grant, I want stories to be 6-issue blocks for trade paperbacks. Then, okay, we need to fix Spider-Man. He had some plans, but he brought in J. Michael Straczynski. Same thing. Straczynski understood the assignment. Then went over to the Avengers, brought in Bendis, who'd done such a good job on the Ultimate books. And then from there, they would try things here and there. Some would work and some wouldn't. But the main focus was streamline these books, make them readable. The other thing, because Quesada was an artist, he looked at the Marvel books and said, you can't read them. Tons and tons of text. Pages that didn't make any sense but looked really good when somebody bought the original art and put it on the wall. And he basically said, no, cutting down on the number of words on a page. We're not going to have excessive continuity. It's not going to be tying into 20 other stories from the past. I want somebody to be able to pick up a comic, read it, and understand it. I want somebody to be able to pick up a trade paperback, read it, and understand it. Now, he and Bill Jemas got into a kind of a pissing contest with DC. And at the time, it was fun. Because it was, Wizard was still hot. And it was kind of that frat boy humor that was really hot in the late 90s, early 2000s. But by 2006, Bill Jemas was gone. Quesada had backed off of that. And it was more, okay, we're going to have a plan. And he would have the writers' conferences where, all right, what's the big event we're building toward? House of M? Cool. And people would throw in ideas. And then, all right, where does it go from there? One of the things that a lot of writers and editors said that Joe Quesada was great at was, all right, then what?
I do have one question, though. Is he the source of the idea that Marvel DC wouldn't do crossovers anymore? Or did that come from somewhere else?
That came from DC when Paul Levitz got mad at them taking pot shots at him.
Yeah, because the last thing they did, of course, was the Jla Avengers in 2003 to 2004. But again, well, I don't want to derail, but it's been money on the table. When the guy that was maybe they still viewed it as Quesada doing it, but when they stopped doing it, you'd have thought they'd have done something else.
It was easy to cancel the idea because by the end of the 90s, the crossovers weren't selling all that well because there were too many of them.
Yeah, I'm just saying after the success of Jla Avengers, and especially with the reprint they did for Heroes Initiative, the thirst is there. but that's a different subject. We can talk about that later. I just didn't know if that was the source of, no, we're not doing it anymore. But it stems from that era, earlier on.
Quesada got kicked upstairs from editor-in-chief to kind of more overarching, because he was working with the film people, who was doing character design, and they created this post for him, Chief Creative Officer. And it was one of those things where we never quite exactly knew what it meant. But Axel Alonso, who they had poached from Vertigo, became the editor-in-chief. But in a lot of ways, Quesada saved Marvel Comics. We forget that when the first X-Men movie came out, Marvel was still in bankruptcy. They'd gone into bankruptcy in 97. They were still in bankruptcy. And when Quesada took over, a lot of people say, oh, the money they got from the X-Men pulled them out of bankruptcy. That was only part of it. There was also a huge upswing in sales with the Ultimate line, with the trade paperbacks, with getting into bookstores. And overall sales started climbing. By the time you get to Civil War, sales were about what they had been in the early 90s. And smartly, Marvel didn't, we're back where we are in 89, 90, 91. Flood the market. No, they tried new things. They tried Marvel Max. They tried Icon. I think both of those were successful. And he kind of became the stabilizing force in a lot of ways. He became the public face of Marvel in the same way that Stan Lee had. He went on Stephen Colbert shows and has been on both of Colbert's shows. He's done interviews with the press. He's very charming, very likable, very well spoken. And lately, if you watch any of the Marvel documentaries on Disney Plus, he's all over those. Now, one other thing about him leaving. Remember how I mentioned Bill Jamas?
Yeah.
Well, he left Marvel, and it's hard to say whether he left or was pushed. Rumor is that they had a meeting and said, well, you can resign, but he's been in charge of a company called AWA, Artists, Writers, Associates, that publishes comics. They do okay. And I guess there was a dispute at that company. He wanted to get into NFTs, and the company said, we don't want to do that. Quesada left Marvel on Monday. Jamas left AWA on Tuesday. Now, I'm not saying that those two things are related. But boy, that's a weird coincidence, ain't it?
I would be surprised. I know Joe has properties that he owns that he could revisit if he's got the itch. And he obviously knows a lot of people. But I don't know if this is the market to be trying up a new comic book company. Media company, maybe. Or, Flounder House for ideas. Certainly, Dark Horse got bought because these guys want to exploit the properties they're not doing. It's kind of like what we're seeing in streaming. They're trying to buy content. You've got all these comic companies. They're not there to publish comics. They're there to catch someone's attention and sell a property to maybe make into a movie or television show. Comics are just a sidebar. Because judging by the way you've been talking of, when you talk about sales, there ain't a lot of money. I'm not saying you can't, but boy, that making comics is not a really good way of making money.
A couple of things to point out here. Joe is 60. And he has been in a high-pressure job for 22 years. His art sells for a fortune. His original art goes for high dollars. if he were to just say, you know what, I want to stay home, want to draw comics, there is not a publishing company in this world that would turn down a pitch from him.
Oh, heck no. But like I said, he's got his own properties. You know, crank out a 4 or 5 issue miniseries that whomever would give him the best deal.
Or, you know what? Hey, he worked at DC. He's the guy who created the visual for Azrael. He, as chief creative officer, he designed tons and tons and tons and tons of costumes. I could see DC throwing a lot of money at him, saying, hey, why don't you come over here, do a Justice League story, redesign some costumes, etc., etc. One other thing I do want to point out of all the executives in comics that were around in the year 2000, there is one left. Does Joe know who's left? As a major executive who was a major executive at one of the bigger comic companies in the year 2000.
I'm drawing a blank.
Jim Lee is the last man standing.
Oh, wow. I wonder how long he'll hang there. Speaking of a guy who could just do commissions the rest of his life and be set.
Yep. So, that's the biggest
Speaking
news
of
in
which,
comics
Joe, if
going
you're
on.
out there and you want to come talk to us exclusively, our lines are always open.
And I do okay interviews.
You never know. Oh, you do great interviews.
Now, one of the things that people have listened to, they've listened to us blather on about Free Comic Book Day.
Yes.
And I thought we would take some time today and go over some of the free comic books we got.
Some?
And I have some.
I read all of them.
I haven't read all of them yet.
No, I haven't either. I just want to make you feel guilty.
Yeah, nothing makes me feel guilty.
I know it. Not even watching starving people and you're not even sharing pie. Just does not happen.
That's because pie's not good for you. I'm saving them.
So for the rest of our time, you just want to round robin back and forth?
Sure. I want to point out a few things that I noticed with this year's Free Comic Book Day.
No toy. Well, we didn't do toys. There's some years they have toys, and I try to get them, but if they offered one, I didn't bother this year.
There were fewer books this year. And there were more books that were just reprints, which that I found really interesting. One of the books I'll be reviewing is just a reprint. The book from Oni is the reprint of Jla and the Impossible Monsters, which is the first issue. The Best Archie Comic Ever is a partial printing of the Best Archie Comic Ever that's coming out in a month or so. Lots of reprints of stuff. Lots of reprints of first issues. Not as many original stories.
Now, there are 3 I'm going to disqualify myself for right away because, well, the first one, Avengers, X-Men, Eternals, Judgment Day from Marvel, DC, Dark Crisis, Special Edition, because I'm going to read these anyways. So this is just wetting my beak. We've talked about it in our preview episode. The other one I'm just going to mention is every year, the Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics 2022. I always say it every year. It's a great read, but this is the type of book that should be available year-round. If you're a comic book store, you should super stock up on these. And you get a new person in the store, hand them one of these, because I think it's a great overview of just what the heck's going on. Certainly better than looking at a bookstore of shelf of hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of comics and back issues and graphic novels. So those 3 right away I read, but I didn't even put them on the board. The first one I read that got me going, and I guess how I judge these, if I read it and it makes me want to read more. That's pretty much it. I mean, that's really the bottom line of Free Comic Book Day for me. I want to be exposed to something that wouldn't have caught my eye, or maybe it did catch my eye, and we talked about it on previews, but I just haven't bought it. And let's see. From Epicenter Comics, Tex in the Land of Seminoles. This is a excerpt from a graphic novel, which is going to be available July 20th, 2022. Kind of a Western type thing, Tex. T-E-X. An unexpected turn of events puts Tex, under his pseudonym Ben Walker, in command of the Army Scouts. Faced with the bloodthirsty behavior of his companions, Tex can only show his true nature as he opposes the massacres of the Seminole women and children. Heroic fighter of the day turns into a hunted deserter. And let's see, story by Marco Bozzelli, artwork Michael Rubini. It's in black and white, but it is enough of the story, and it's just wonderful. Maybe I just pine for Westerns because I tend to be drawn for them when I see them. But there's enough of it. You get a good 30-page chunk of the story. It starts in the beginning, takes a bit of time to figure out who's who, but by the 6th page, you've already figured out who Tex is if you can't tell by the cover. You figure out who the bad guys are. Everybody's a little nuanced, so just because they're hunting them doesn't mean they're all bad. It's quite an adventure as they rumble through the swamp, try to get away from, Tex is trying to get away from the bad guys. Towards the end, he runs into the Seminoles, and of course, they're not really thrilled to see White Man there. And it ends on a cliffhanger, which is good because on the back cover shows you what's coming in July, what's coming this summer, this fall, and of course, what's available now, the Magnificent Outlaws. So these, I'm assuming, being that it was 30-page preview, which was really a huge hunk of story, my assumption is these are all graphic novels that are available right now. I enjoyed this thoroughly. I will be definitely looking for them as I finally get my geek on and go visit other comic stores. They'll probably be in the previews, of course, and if you need some now, www.epiccentercomics.com. Only one C when you go Epic Center. So that was my first one I read. Like I said, I read a whole slew of them, and then the one that actually impressed me most of all, this would have to be it. What you got for your first choice today?
I had that one as well, and I wanted to point out a few things about it. As an introduction, I thought it was okay. Tex is a European comic.
Which I thought you could guess by the way I did a little Italian flair on the names.
Yeah, and you can also tell by the art. The art is very European in style. I will say that it took until the end of the story for me to realize that it's not really a Western. It's set in Florida, because the whole time I'm reading it going, why are they in a swamp if this is a Western?
I would have thought the Seminoles would have tipped it off because they were only
right at the
around
end.
Florida. The title of the book.
Yeah, but I didn't pay attention to that until I was reading the story. The other thing that I did not like is we put our character in a cliffhanger, and then we have a Deus Ex Machina. Tex is about to get shot, and all of a sudden, the character that we don't know anything about shows up and saves him. Now,
yeah, I think this kind of started in the middle of the story, so I'm wondering if we might have met him early on, and we just didn't know it here.
But there was a lot that wasn't in this story that you had to pick up. It's one of those where all the pieces didn't fall into place for me until the end. I love the art. Absolutely adore this art. The story itself is okay as an excerpt. I'd want to read the whole thing, but it did whet my anticipation for reading the whole thing for a book that I knew nothing about when I picked it up. And that's what these free comic book day books should be. It shouldn't be, hooray, I'm getting all these free comics and everything. It should be, you read the book and you go, oh, cool, I want more of that. And this really succeeded in that regard. By the end of it, it was, oh, okay, I don't know what this Zagor is, and I don't know if I'd want to read a team up between Tex and Zagor, but there is a Tex book already out there. I would probably go to my comic shop and say, hey, do you have, what's it called here? It's way too small to make out. The Something Outlaw. I would just say, do you have the textbook, or can you order that from Diamond? So
The Magnificent Outlaw.
That's it.
I have my cheaters with me.
So the book did what it was supposed to do, and it was successful in my eyes. Now, you did mention the Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics.
Yeah, I rave about it every year, which is why I kind of put it to the side.
It is a great book for new readers, but for me, it seems like it's the same thing every year, and it's pretty basic information. And does it push me to buy the other stuff that they have? Well, this year, they did hype the Overstreet Price Guide to Lost Universes as part of the story. There is a book, the Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics, that they push in there. There is a section in the middle about horror comics, but it doesn't really say the theme of this year's Overstreet Price Guide is horror comics, or we've got more information about horror comics. So, and I also like the, there it is, the Guide to Collecting Comics by Overstreet. I like the ad at the back, on the back page, where it did show that, yes, there is a horror section in the Overstreet Price Guide. And I'll also say, Joe, do you have your Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics?
Somewhere.
Okay. The inside front cover, 1970, where it started. 2022, our next chapter begins. And there's an A with a circle in it saying coming soon. That's a terrible ad, because it gives me no idea who it's for, where to go, what I'm looking for. I don't know. So while for me, the Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics, it's the same thing every year with a few changes, I think it is something that comic shops should have bundles of and give it away, not just on Free Comic Book Day, like you said. What's next on your list?
Well, I read the two DC offerings that had Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman. First one was Diana, Princess of the Amazons. Let's see, Shannon Hale, Dean Hale, and illustrated by Victoria Ying. And then they had Tempest Tossed, which was written by Laurie Helse Anderson, illustrated by Jla Duca? I don't know. Give us a call if we screw up your name. We're so sorry. Both these are geared towards younger readers. In other words, they're dealing with the whole line that DC's been doing, and we've talked about it endless times in our preview episodes. The whole younger, middle grade, young adult reader line. Of these, Diana, Princess of Amazons is middle grade. The Tempest Tossed is more young adult. The graphic novels are available now. It's telling that they give the ISBN numbers in the back of the books as opposed to the star system number. Both these are great. I mean, if I had the money, I would probably read a lot of the DC young adult lines. We mention them here and there, but I don't have money to buy the so-called adult, well, I wouldn't call them adult line, but the normal comic reader line, the ones that you and I have been invested in for nigh these 40 years. But it's great that they're doing these. They should actually have these out, especially if a comic store is not going to carry these. They should have them out at Barnes & Noble, so kids could pick them up and go, hey, Ma, I want to buy these. Both stories I enjoy thoroughly. The art is very good for the style. On Diana, Princess of the Amazon, she's young. She's feeling the pains because she's not old enough to play with the grown-ups in their Amazonian games, and she's too old to play with dolls or do anything. And she's essentially the only kid on the island. And what gives her an idea is when one of their, Aunt Lisa is her name, she's working with Kray, and she tells them the story about once upon a time, the Queen of Amazon wanted a daughter more than anything in the world. And Diana goes, oh, I think I know this one. Anyway, she continues the story, makes the figure, blows on it. Nothing happens, and she kind of looks at Diane and goes, clearly I am not Queen of the Amazons. So Diana, of course, later on the beach, feeling a bit lonely, makes herself a friend out of sand and figures since she's royalty, it maybe work with her. She blows on it, and of course, nothing happens. Until later on, she's being followed by someone in a forest. So she turns around and gives chase. You can almost predict, because you and I have been reading comics for a long time, what happened. She gave life to this sand creature. And it doesn't go much farther. Again, it's one of those where it stops. Will Diana's new friend get her in trouble? Read Diana, Princess of the Amazon. Well, I want to read it. That's all I can say about that. The Tempest Tossed, a little bit older. She's still young, but she's not quite the warrior. She's kind of protected from all that. What she does is apparently there's a hole in the barrier that allows people through. Diana, after being, I guess she has kind of a coming of age ceremony where she's given the things we know, the lasso of truth, bracelets, the crown forever, and then the Amazons discover the hole that they're worried about. People have been coming through because their ship sank, and so Diana runs out to help them. While she does save everybody outside, the hole is closed and now she's stuck there. And that's pretty much where it ends. You can read the complete story in Wonder Woman Tempest Tossed. And I do. I want to read it. I talked about buying the Teen Titans Beast Boy Loves Raven at Target a while back, but they do a great job of listing all these books in the back under DC Essential Graphic Novels, as well as a few other ads and things like that. On the back cover, they're pushing Stargirl on CW. But this did what it's supposed to do. I mean, I know I'm not the audience this is for, but there's a simplicity about these stories I like. Just like when I read Batman 66 or Superman Adventures or when Ultimate Spider-Man started. There's not years of continuity bogging things down. And I enjoy continuity as much as the next guy, but sometimes I just want to read something where it's just fun and I can take it as it is. And while I probably won't buy these unless I happen to find them really cheap at a comic store at a sale, it does make me want to go to the local comic or library and maybe get them through the library system and read them that way. So again, this did what it was supposed to do. I read the book. It makes me want to read more. Boy, if only I had $1 million and I could just say, I'm off to buy them. I can't. Oh, well. What's up next for you, Mr. Strode?
The next book I have is from Aftershock, which, remember when I mentioned Axel Alonso a little earlier?
Yes.
That's where he ended up.
Ooh.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. It is not. It is Mike Martz, who was also a editor at Marvel. I apologize for that. I thought it was Axel who was over there, but...
Give us a call, Mike. We know you're mad at us.
Bunny Mask Tales. Now, Bunny Mask is one of Aftershock's ongoing series. And these are 2 short stories that take place in that world. I came into it knowing nothing about Bunny Mask. The first is a very short story by Paul Tobin, Andrea Muti, and it is a man who is kind of being indoctrinated into Bunny Mask's world of horror and murder. And then the second story, also by Paul Tobin, this one is drawn by Roberta Ingranata, is about a man who lives next door to a couple, and he's kind of a pervert. He drills a hole in the wall so that he can look in on them. But things start getting weird in that he notices that he can see them in different rooms. And sometimes when he looks through the hole, he can see them when they're not at home doing something together. And it gets weirder and weirder from there. I thought this was an okay horror comic. I didn't understand the Bunny Mask girl at all, but that's fine because it is a horror comic and it's an ongoing series, so they're doing a tease to get you interested in it. The art is kind of 2020s standard indie art. It relies more on light and shadow than a lot of sketchy lines. It's well done. The figures are well done. The staging is good. The stories are really creepy. And while the first story was short and super gimmicky, the second story really built that horror vibe and really made you. It felt like a Twilight Zone episode. And I liked that. It was a lot like what was it? What's the Netflix show? Black Mirror. A lot like Black Mirror as well, where it's doing horror stories kind of set in a modern type world, dealing with the way our world is now. I would not have picked up Bunny Mask let's say this was on the shelf for $3.99. I wouldn't have picked it up. After reading it, I am intrigued. I want to know a little more about it. They don't have much in the way of an ad, such as, Bunny Mask has 3 trade paperbacks, and here are the names of them and how to order them. It's more just, there's a single ad that's Bunny Mask, the Hollow Inside, preview the new chapter of the new series. Does not list the trade paperbacks. You got to list the trade paperbacks. You got to do that. You got to give it so that when somebody reads this, if they like it, they could go to their shop and look for those trade paperbacks, look for the books, ask their dealer for the books. A couple of other things I noticed. One is in every free comic book day comic that came through Diamond, there is a page ad for Pull Box, which is where you can set up your comic. Here are the comics that I buy. Put in your comic shop's name, and it will send that list to your comic shop. Now, I don't know how popular this is, how much it's being used, but I know if I were a comic shop, I'd be pretty happy about that. That Diamond is helping. There's also an ad for the Joe Kubert School, an ad for Word Balloon, which is a podcast that's been going for longer than ours. Did you know their podcasts have been going on longer than ours?
Wow, we started a trend.
John Suntress, it's interview podcast. He comes from radio, really good at interviews. His Brian Michael Bendis interviews are fantastic. And then the last page is an ad from Aftershock where they are looking to hire ambassadors. Enlist as an Aftershock ambassador and carry on a tradition that started at Aftershock's founding, serving as a brand representative to comic shop retailers across North America. If selected, you'll be assigned to a geographic territory in which you reside. You'll undergo training and gain rare insight into the day-to-day operation of the fastest growing young publisher in comics today. Oh yeah, and you'll get paid. So I think that's a fascinating idea. I don't know how much you'd get paid, but they probably give you a little kit to go to the comic shop and go, hey, Are you ordering Aftershock books, which is what Diamond used to do, but doesn't anymore because they're the 800-pound gorilla. They don't need to do that. Except now they're not.
No.
Huh. Funny how that happened. Joe, what's your next book?
All right. I was going to lump these together, but I think I'll break them off because there were a lot of previews for horror books. Now, there's generally two things you can do in comics that kind of make my eyes glaze: horror and anthologies. I really don't like either. And I know I'm missing out probably on a lot, but I don't really get into many of them. I did pull one out of Boombox. And again, this one seems to be geared towards a younger audience. It's called Hollow. It's about a gentleman named, let's see if I can find his real name here. His last name's Kray, there it is, Isabel Crane. And he happens to be moving into a town where Halloween is well, it's Sleepy Hollow is where he's moving into. And so everybody is really, really into the whole Headless Horseman deal. They celebrate it year round. People love and we just so happen school's starting, so they're heading towards the Sleepy Hollow Halloween with an O, not an A, kickoff festival. And he's kind of not quite sure how he fits in. He's kind of fallen for a woman who was Victoria Van Tassel, who, if you remember the story, was one of the main women in the original tale. And this, of course, is one of her great whatever granddaughters. So they kind of hit it off, and then she discovers his name is Crane. Crane? I'm sorry, but seeing with a crane is the last thing I need. Huh? Wait a second. See you around. And it was just, again, this is more of like a high school type thing going on, but it was just real interesting. I remember it caught my eye, and I might have even mentioned it in previews, but I do appreciate I get a chance to read it. It's very clean art, obviously design or cartoonish, and it was just enough of a story to get me intrigued where I want to buy the rest. Fortunately, I have to wait till September 2022. In the meantime, Boom did a great job of listing all their other, I guess, teen type stuff. Some of the Just Beyond series, Wind, Disney's Just Beyond. They have an ad for Power Rangers. Again, on the back, previews World Pull Box. So this is one of those where, again, I don't know if I'm going to go for it. Will I buy the graphic novel? Again, I got to wait till September. Let's see, backtrack. So I imagine we'll revisit this in July when we get to July previews. It was a good story. There was enough of a hook. It's set in modern day. And is there a horseman running about? Well, it's hard to say. You never know if people are pranking you or not. So, yeah. You're supposed to make a horse noise. Anyways, so that's from Boombox. I enjoyed reading it. What else you got, Mr. Strode?
The next book I have here is 10 Ton Press presents 10 Ton Tales. This is the second one from the publisher 10 Ton Press. It has 4 stories in it. The first is Charlie and Humphrey by Justin Sane and John Hageman. They had a Charlie and Humphrey story in last year's. It was my favorite in the book, and once again, it is my favorite in this book. It is a cute little story of a shop that sells all sorts of things. Looks like it sells stuffed animals and everything, but they're overwhelmed. They have too much work to do, so they need to hire a temp. They accidentally hire a clown as the temp, and shenanigans ensue. I really like this series. The art is very much aimed at kids. It's really charming, really cute, but much like Underdog and Bullwinkle and Rocky, there's enough stuff in here that the adults who read it are going to enjoy it as well. It's a true all ages book. The next one is Silver Chime by Mike Gustovich, who's been around drawing comics for ages. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 pages that I could not make heads or tails out of. I don't know what the heck happened. I was lost. Next was Rock and Roll Biographies by Mel Smith, and I will mispronounce this, Pius Calzada, which is a super abbreviated version of how the Foo Fighters got together. Now, I have not read Dave Grohl's autobiography yet, but this is a super simplified version. It reminded me a lot of the better issues of Rock and Roll Comics. Rock and Roll Comics in the late 80s, early 90s was a series that did unauthorized biographies. This one seems to be a little more authorized. The art is okay. The story is okay. I think there is a market for this because I remember when I worked at Schindler's, Rock and Roll Comics was one of those books. We didn't keep it with the comics. We kept it with the rock and roll magazines and such, and it flew off the shelves, no matter how bad the art was in that thing. So I think there is a market for this. I just thought that the story was way too simplified for the Foo Fighters. And then the last is a story called The Bottle by Stefan Jackson and German Adriazola. And again, it's mostly silent. I could not make heads or tails out of what was going on in it. I don't know if it's a preview for another book or if this is a complete story or just what the heck it is. It reminded me a lot of those early heavy stories in heavy metal where it was more about, we're going to draw some cool art and we've got some really cool coloring effects and doesn't this look awesome, rather than, okay, here's a beginning, middle, and end. So out of the 4 in 10-ton press, there's one that hooked me, one that I think would do okay with other people, and the other 2 just did not work for me. But I like the fact that it was 4 samplers. They were all kind of complete to let you know what these books are. The problem with it is, again, they don't list Charlie and Humphrey. Here's the issues. Here's a trade paperback. Silver Chime. Here's when it's coming out. Rock and Roll Biographies does have a little blurb at the end, which says, what exactly does it say? Look for the larger story of the Foo Fighters from Rock and Roll Biographies. And then the last one, the bottle. I no idea if that's part of a story, complete story, whatever. When you're doing this stuff, you need to, you're basically getting in front of a new audience who doesn't know anything about you. By the time they're done, they should be able to say, I want to pick this up. I will go to my comic shop and I will tell them I want this. If I were publishing one of these, I would make sure that I had those diamond codes in everything. You know, have a page after the story. Here are the trade paperbacks. Here's the upcoming comics. Here's the diamond code, so that the reader can go to the shop and go, I want this. Joe, what's next for you?
You ever read one of these and realize, yeah, I don't think this is for me?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I read one. I know we talked about it, but Image, Tilly Walden, thank you for including Clementine in Free Comic Book Day. It's the bold, new, young adult adventure from The Walking Dead. And what was nice about it, it gave me a chance to give it a try for free. And again, when we say for free, Tim at Granite City was nice enough to cost us out a complete set of these things. Got to give him a mention for that. But it was nice to be able to sit and actually read this. And while I may not jump on board with the comic, I probably will eventually buy the graphic novel because it's just enough of an adventure. It's not tied into anything Walking Dead. You can't jump into Walking Dead book 5 without really understanding what the hell's been going on before. And I also like how they kind of tease some of the what's coming up in stories. Now, is this, Cory, is this a comic or are these graphic novels?
These are going to be, they're going to be those young adult graphic novels.
Okay.
So it will be a series of graphic novels.
So I will probably, I don't know, eventually pick them up. I don't know. But it's not for me. It's intriguing enough where I do appreciate getting a decent sample of it because I've got Walking Dead. Well, I'm trying to get Walking Dead in the compendiums. I think number 3 is the only one I'm missing at the moment. And it was great to see, just get it in my hands to see about it. They do a quick Q&A with Tilly Walden, but that's not all. They go on to one called Machine Boy. Again, reading it, it's not for me. They do an interview with Trivong and Irma Mavila. Again, a third one, Sea Serpent's Heir. I'm not trying those names. Sorry, Scott and Tusina. But the art in this one was good. I'm not quite sure what was going on, which is good, but I can, like you mentioned earlier, Cory, you read along and you just kind of go with the flow. It ends, of course, with a, hey, this is coming on, but it didn't really grab me. But again, I do appreciate at least getting a chance to look at it. It's too bad it's cost prohibitive to do this for almost every book. And again, I imagine with Image, it's a matter of how much the creator wants to put down to do this in order to fund the free comic book day thing, because it's really interesting. Out of all the stuff that they have, these are the 3 that they decided to push. And these are basically, again, the young adult middle grade imprints that they're pushing. Skybound Comet is the name of it. So, well,
Skybound is Robert Kirkman's line. So these are all from Kirkman's group.
And all 3 of these in the book, well, that explains who can afford it if Kirkman can't afford it. But also that, again, a lot of the things that seem to be catching my attention are things that aren't necessarily aimed at me, because they all seem to be more for the young adult middle grade imprint. I find that interesting because that seems to be a big niche that comics and publishers seem to be going for. And we've talked about it before. So again, if you're a comic book store, that may be something. If I had a comic store, I would not have these books that I've reviewed in their own section. I mean, in with the regular graphic novels. I would have it young adult graphic novels, because that signals to the parents, yeah, this is good. You can go for it. And then it's also, why are you going to give that up to the bookstores or online? You should have a piece of the action there. When mom and dad come in and you say, well, how old is your child or your kid or who you're buying for? Head them right over here. So again, sorry, Robert, these aren't for me, but I do appreciate the fact you put it in the free comic book day and gave me a chance to do it. And I may change my mind with Clementine. That does.
I really liked Clementine. Now, if you're looking for a book that's going to be like The Walking Dead, the art style is very different. Storytelling style is very different. But I like the fact that it is different. I like the fact that it's going to be its own thing rather than a continuation of Walking Dead. It is a continuation of the video game world, but even if you look at the cover, which is after the story, it does not say Walking Dead anywhere on it. I imagine on the back it'll have, that it's a tie-in. This package, in my mind, is exactly what you should be doing. There was one thing that I found odd was, it's one of the bigger books. And a few years ago, 2000 AD, went very public with the fact that they wanted to put out a 64-page free comic book day book, and we're told, no, the maximum you can do is 32 pages. And they got into a fight with Diamond over it. They did do a 32-pager, but then they had a $1 sampler. That was the 64-page book that they had planned. This is more than 32 pages. I didn't count up how many pages, but the first half of it is Clementine. I like you, Everyday Hero Machine Boy. That's not aimed at me. I wasn't interested in it. The Sea Serpent's Heir. I've always thought that piracy comics are cool. There aren't a lot of them. But then I also think, that period pieces are cool, and we need to do fantasy comics. And piracy comics, the way this is done, is more of a fantasy comic. But on all of them, it was, here's the cover of the book. Here's when it's coming out. Clementine, available June 2022. Machine Boy, available September 2022. Sea Serpent's Heir, available October 2022. The new line is called Skybound Comet, and on the back shows the covers again, has pull quotes, which if you have ever read novels in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they would have an author that you might know who would have a pull quote on there. Stephen King says, this book is really scary and you should buy it. So they do sort of the same thing here. I thought this was a fantastic package that really hyped these books. And if I were a publisher, this is the blueprint I would use. And that brings us to other things you should use. You know what you should use, Joe? Think back to high school.
Condoms.
Yes, you should use protection. Because when you're on the internet, all sorts of bad things can happen. Plus, you want to have a VPN. The VPN that we think you should use is NordVPN, and here's their info. Our newest sponsor is NordVPN. Let's be honest, if you're out on the internet, you need a VPN to protect you. There's all sorts of things going on the internet where people can track you. You could accidentally download a keylogger, all sorts of things. NordVPN gives the best security possible. It has a password manager which generates complex passwords, syncs across all your devices, stores your notes and credit card information. It also gives you 10 gigabytes of private cloud storage, secure files. It backs up your data automatically. But the main thing it gives you is peace of mind. It gives you peace of mind when you're out on the internet, when you're streaming, when you're playing games, when you're listening to podcasts like this one. It gives you safety anywhere at any time. It protects your online activity. You get full access to all content. And if you use the link go.nordvpn.net sh3ku, it'll take you to where you can get a great deal for a 1-month plan, a 2-year plan, a 1-year plan. They are our newest sponsor. We're happy to have them. And if you would like to sponsor something here at any of the podcasts on the Solitaire Rose Network, you can. Just email me, solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Thanks. And I do other podcasts. I cheat on this podcast a lot. Sorry, Joe. And here's me talking about them. The Solitaire Rose Podcast Network is filled with all kinds of audio goodness. First, there's Crazy Comics and Stories. It's been going since 2010. It drops every Monday, and it has me,
your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, and Joe Crazy Writer, talking comics, shenanigans, and whatever we're freaking and geeking about. Every Monday morning. It's been going since 2010, and it's available at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. Also on that same feed is the Solitaire Rose podcast, which is me, again, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, doing interviews, talking about comics history, pretty much talking about whatever I want to talk about. We've also got Solo Joe, where Joe Crazy Writer does a solo podcast, and he hasn't done one in a while, so kick him in the shins to get him started. We also, on that same feed, have Solitaire Rose Series and Review, where we do DVD commentary of older comic book series. That's all at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. I also do a podcast with Wolfie B. Bad at badadvice.solitairerose.com, where we take listener questions and give them bad advice. There's also Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's at novels.solitairerose.com. There's also Fantastic Forecast, where myself and Adam Vermillion are going through the entire run of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time. That's fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com. There are always more podcasts at the Solitaire Rose Podcast Network. Be there. Aloha.
And now we get to Joe's favorite part of the show. No, not where he goes into deep detail on the breast physics in Red Sonja's She-Devil with the Sword reprint, the art by Frank Thorne. No, it's Joe. What's going on the eBays?
Well, I'm going to give Cory a choice because, as I said, it's been a long time since we've done a podcast. And I got oodles to talk about. So I can either talk a lot about eBay or a lot about freaking and geeking.
Let's do a lot about freaking and geeking.
All right. Because, you know, the eBays is on.
It's
the eBays is on 24/7. And it's always under KRAYZ. And you can always send me a note like some people have and said, hey, I listen to your podcast. Love it. I'm interested in this. What can you give me for it? You've got some nerve. But since I'm out of keys for the compound and Cory's hanging there 24/7, it's not as much fun. I've given away some pretty good deals. What? Well, why don't you give me a try and we'll talk more about it next week. KRAYZ, come get some.
And you stomp all over my joke because you were talking about it's been a long time. Been a long time since I rock and rolled.
Been longer with you. I could hear your bones creaking just singing that.
Been a long, lonely time. And now it's time for my favorite part of the show. No, not where I go into detail on Frank Thorne's art on Red Sonja's She-Devil with the Sword.
Ooh.
How they got this through the Comics Code, I have no idea, but it was the 70s. No, it's Freaking and Geeking Joe. What are you freaking on?
Oh, let's see. I broke my No, I shouldn't say I broke it. My postal scale broke. And, you know, I need it because I got an eBay stuff. I'm always mailing stuff almost daily. You'd think after 22 years, it wouldn't just crap out on me. And it wasn't even that. It was one of those where the wire just gave way when you're trying to change the 9-volt battery. And I knew it was going to break. And it's like I had one thing to mail, and I'm like, no, don't break. And when I plug in the new battery, nothing. And I don't know if somebody wants to take it from me and solder it together, go ahead. But I gave up. But I went and got a new one from the post office. So that's not really a freaking no more. And for a while there, I don't know if you had this, Cory, there was a glitch with Facebook. It was an Android thing. It was like every time I tried to correct something, the cursor would like pop to the beginning. Like say I noticed I spelled train wrong. I forgot the I. So I'd go back to where the I should go, and I'd type in I. It would go to the beginning of the whole sentence. And then I'd go back and I'd try to erase that, and it would pop back to the end of the sentence. And then when I would try to correct that, it would correct the word I didn't mean to correct. It was just frustrating as all hell. And I was It was just one of those stealth upgrades that Facebook does when you're not paying attention, and it just effed everything up. So eventually I just turned off the predictive text on my Android and turned it back on 2 weeks later. It's working. So that went away. I was very sad as I was cleaning up because I broke cookie jar that my late aunt had made for me. We were moving stuff around the basement. We ran across a whole pile of stuff, basically glass vases from all the flowers I probably have given my wife over the years. And it's like, well, we don't need all these. So we segregated out the ones we need, the ones we don't. The ones we don't are in a box waiting to be dumped off on Goodwill. The ones we needed were on a table with the cookie jar, and we're like, okay, be careful. Well, as we were moving other things around, something bumped the table, and all I heard was crash, and my heart broke. The bottom of the cookie jar is scraped, but the top Cookie Monster's head is shattered beyond repair. And the fact that it was made by my late aunt, and you know, I try not to get attached to things you do. But when I went and I looked at the bottom, she had handwritten to my nephew Joe the date she made it. Oh, it killed me. So anyways, I got the bottom, and some friends online said, well, you know, that looks a lot like the 70s cookie jar. Maybe you can find one and replace it. And I'm like, maybe, I don't know. But what really is grinding my gear, and I don't want to go too far into this because you and I have talked about it ad nauseum, Cory. Toxic fandom is in freaking overload. I didn't realize it, but apparently CM Punk won the AEW, what do they call it?
World Heavyweight Championship.
Thank you. And you'd have thought he personally came to these people's house and crapped on their Wheaties, because all I read were people bitching. Oh, I can't believe AEW didn't put it on somebody more worthy of it. Oh, I can't believe they used an old WWE guy and they gave him the belt. Oh, this is just like when Bischoff comes in. He was right, giving the belt to some old guy. Okay, I don't watch AEW because I just haven't gotten the habit of going online to watch it. Cory is more into this, so maybe he'll mention something later on. But man, I sent Cory a note right away. I said, really, is this the reaction? And he's like, no. And the other one that really got me is Star Wars fans again, the way they're, missing Graham. What's her first name?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched Obi-Wan yet, but I have read that the Star Trek people have said, hey, quit being jerks.
Oh, and what it is like, okay, I haven't run into them, but there are people giving her racist rants, and they just don't like her. There's no reason to pick on racism. If that's seriously, I don't know how you feel about this, Cory, but if you think because she's black she's terrible, you really should be listening to us on this here podcast, because I don't know if I want you as a listener. You don't like her as an actor? That's fine. But again, I don't know, Cory, maybe we should pin this somewhere. How to properly critique somebody. Not, oh, she sucks, her acting's terrible. No, I don't like her character. I don't like her acting. I don't like the writing, the directing. Fine. Your opinion is not the be-all and end-all, and especially if you're a racist fuck and you're like, well, that's my opinion. No, you're racist. Just suck it up and own it.
Now, can I give a little background on her?
Absolutely.
She received a Princess Grace Award in her final year at Yale, which is the award they give. It's based on Princess Grace, who made an endowment for acting at Yale. She received rave reviews for her lead performance at 12th Ninth. She has a Master of Fine Arts. She has won awards for her acting in things such as Queen's Gambit. She was nominated for a Primetime Emmy. She's been nominated and won tons of awards. She is listed as in Variety as one of 10 actors to watch, and these angry nerd fanboys, she can't act.
Wrong.
Your opinion means nothing at this point.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about. And it's the same. One of the things when I first got on the internet back in 91, the first thing I wanted to do was talk about the things I was excited about, talk about the comics I liked, talk about the TV shows and the movies I liked. And it was generally positive. And over the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, I avoid fandoms at all costs. If I like something, I should join a group that talks about it. Everything they're going to talk about is, this is all terrible. I'm scared to post that I like any of the new Star Trek series because it brings out people who I never hear from. They're all terrible. All the new series are terrible, and they don't understand Star Trek.
And it makes me want to question these yabos. I try not to engage. The best I might give them is like, well, I'd agree with you, but then we'll both be wrong. Jerry Lawler defense. Why are you wasting your time watching something you clearly hate?
Yeah.
The other one that got me, and this is back to the Star Wars thing, is I see white boy fanboys, and yes, they are white, on, the Facebook. Well, I don't understand with the racist stuff. I don't see it. Well, I don't see it either, but you're just not believing it because you don't see it? Again, giving their ass side defense of, well, I don't like her either, but I'm not going to, they're not defending the racist. They're just saying, well, I didn't see it. Then why are you commenting on it?
And not even that.
And you're not even condemning it. You're just like, well, yeah, I don't believe it happened. She's just a bad actor.
There's race involved, but there's also just pure toxicity. The actor who played the young Anakin Skywalker got so much crap from people, he quit acting.
Yeah,
Think about that. A little kid, you're terrible, you've ruined Star Wars, I hate you, I hope you die. He's like 10 years old getting this stuff. I don't like certain things. But I don't drive to Michael Bay's house and take a shit on his yard and put up a sign that says, I hate you and I hope you die. I just don't watch it.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't watch it. Let those of us who do like it enjoy it. Let people like things.
And you don't have to comment on everything. And if you do, just say, I tried it. I don't like it. That's fine. That said, I don't like her character because I'm not supposed to. I watch enough pro wrestling to recognize when somebody is supposed to be the heel. And she is definitely the heel. Although, well, I'm not going to, I'm going to mention it more in geeking, but I, as a heel character, I really want to see her comeuppance. And I'm already 3 of the 6 episodes in, so that's all I'm going to say about that. So, that's enough. Cory, what are you freaking on?
Number 1 is the ads in comics for other comics. And it was something I spoke to a little bit earlier, but I really noticed it lately, where the ad is just oh, look, Superman or this comic or that, and especially in non-Marvel and DC books. It's just a picture. Not, here's this comic, here's when it's coming out, here's any information on it. It's just, oh, here's character A. If you're an indie book and you're introducing a new character, your ad had better tell me why I need to read that book, or I'm not going to. Just a pretty page of art. Oh, that's a nice pinup. What's the book about? No idea. Not a clue. This person's in it. That's all I know. I get that you don't want to spill all your beans, but you need to get me interested. You need to get somebody interested. It can't just be, oh, well, here's a cover of issue number 1. I'm going to pass right on by that because I don't know what your book's about. It's terrible advertising. It's a bad idea. I don't like it. Today, I had to drive into work because when I woke up this morning, I opened up the work laptop and it didn't start. So I email them, say, hey, I've got to come in. The laptop's not working. I bring it in. I give it to the tech guy who's there. He looks at it and says, oh, your battery is really bulging.
Oh.
To which I replied, well, yeah, we've all put on a little weight since the pandemic. The laptop's not, the battery's not going to the gym with me. I don't. No, it's, I've had the laptop for about 4 years. And the work laptops that they get, they're not meant for the type of work we put them through, where they're online and we need to leave them on all the time in case there's an update, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to go into work today, and it was really eerie because now they've got the hybrid work situation. Guess what? Nobody came back. Nobody there. I went to the front desk. They had a sign that said, we don't have anybody working here after 1 p.m. I don't know why I think that they're getting rid of 2 of the 6 floors that we are leasing. But, it was weird. And, yeah. The group home they've been sneaky, Joe. They've been really sneaky. Because it's, I will get there, and on the weekends, people are constantly calling in all the time. So it's, can you come in an hour early? Can you stay an hour late? Can you stay 2 hours late? To the point where I got, here's the hours that are open. What ones do you want? So for Sunday, I said, well, I can work this time to this time. And she was like, well, why did you say you could? I think it was, I'm going to a bad movie night. So I said, well, I could work from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. She's like, well, the shift was 3 to 10. I said, yeah, I know how this works. You're going to email me in a few days saying, can I come in at 2? And then a few days before, you're going to say, can I come in at 1? I've already looked at the schedule. I already see where the gaps are. I know your game. I got an email back, said, well, you caught me. And then the last thing I am freaking on, when I moved to Minnesota, there were 6 drive-ins. There was one in Eden Prairie that closed the year that I moved here. I think the year I moved here was the last year they were open. There was one in St. Paul. There was one in Blaine. There was one in Richfield. There was Cottage View down in Cottage Grove and Valley High. And over the years, all of them have closed except for Valley High. Valley High has not opened yet. There is the city where, because Valley High still, to me, feels like it's out in the middle of nowhere. But somebody bought some of the farmland around it to build a huge office park. And they had a sign saying they were hiring. Then they took the sign down that they were hiring. And they didn't open over Memorial Day weekend. Their phone isn't, nobody's picking up the phone. Even, I think it was Channel 11 did a story about no one seems to know what's going on.
And
Well,
their
finally,
phone's been disconnected.
well, the owner finally came out and said, like a month before the season opened, the manager who'd been working there forever retired, left the state. And they haven't been able to get anybody since. They don't have enough workers, et cetera, et cetera. So he will open if he's able to find a manager, but he may not open this year. And it is not for lack of money. I'll say that, because even I didn't go the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but they've been packed. You know, because I follow their fan page, even on weeknights during the summer, they are packed. They sell out on weekends. But it looks like that the last drive-in in the Twin Cities is gone. The drive-in will never die. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Oh, I got lots of things to geek on because, like you've been saying, I've been sitting at home. I may not be geeking, but I got a lot of stuff done. Like what I've been watching. Okay, I watched a show called Meltdown, and I didn't write down what platform it's on, but you can Google it and figure it out. This was a 3-episode, oh, this was Netflix, 3-episode series dealing with 3 Mile Island, which was a little nuclear accident that was the worst in the world until a little event called Chernobyl happened. And essentially what happened was a lot of lying, a lot of cover up, a lot of cancer, and possible death. I'm not talking from the meltdown, from the people that were whistleblowing. It's a piece of history. It just shows you what happens when you get too much money, too much power, and too much government involved in one area. It didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened. They lied to cover up. You just got to watch it because you're going to shake your head and really, really wonder why something like that happened. I've been catching up on season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. I'm sorry, I got season 2 done. I'm on season 3. And I'm really digging it. And I understand why people are saying it's much better now. When did 3 come out? A couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, this spoiler warning for something that was spoiled for me, but the move to the future, when they do 1,000 years or something, 950 years into the future,
Yeah.
to save the past, works because first of all, we got to rediscover everything we thought we knew, and I've just been enjoying it because it is essentially Trek in all of its glory. I'm also enjoying Strange New Worlds, which I'll be going to watch this week's episode as we finish this here podcast. I don't remember the name of it, but I did watch the 2-part George Carlin documentary. And I thought I knew George Carlin. I didn't know nothing about George Carlin. So if you're a George Carlin fan, you really ought to check this out. I don't know. I don't remember the name of it or what platform, but
HBO Plus.
HBO Plus. So you could do like I do. I always tell people when they say, how can you prove this? Well, let's see. HBO Plus, George Carlin, and it comes up George Carlin's American Dream. So see how easy it is to find this stuff? We finished watching another show called Julia, based on Julia Childs, the French chef, which was, again, people recommended it. It's not something I had gone out of my way to watch, but my wife and I watched it. They did a first season. Whether they do any more, I don't know, but it was really kind of a neat, assuming it was all true, about how they got this show on public television out back when public television was just boring people talking documentaries, pre-Sesame Street, good acting, just a lot of fun. And I remember Julia Childs from growing up. I loved Obi-Wan. I've already raved about it. I just rediscovered Night Court. It's on Amazon Prime, and if you want to pay for it without ads, Chris and I just suck it up and just watch 30 seconds of ads. And basically jumped to season 4 because we've got the first 3 on DVD. They were released publicly on DVD, which is why they're easy to find. The other ones were released on you had to contact Time Warner or whomever, and they would slap together a set and send it for you, which is why if you find them for sale, they tend to top at about $50. But I just want to watch it. It's kind of the show we watch before we go to bed. Dang it, I thought I was ready for it. Let me find something here. Okay, hang on. I'm going to have to go to Facebook because we found out there's another show coming up. And what was cool about it.
Oh, yeah, the Comic Squad people.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Let me crank up the old Facebook.
It's in the mall in Woodbury.
Valley Creek Mall.
And he was selling tables $20 a pop, and they all sold first day.
Yep. Let's see.
Which is pretty good for especially a group that only has about 260, 270 members, which shows me that there is such a need.
Oh, yeah.
For
here we go.
little shows.
Saturday, September 17th. It's away. 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Minnesota Comic Exchange Comic Show. The group is private, but their events thing is open. It's 5 hours, free, and like you said, it's all sold out. So as it gets going, the reason I mentioned that was because if you go to the webpage, they actually put our comic podcasts on the page. So we'll have to give them a shout out and say, hey, we gave you a shout out because you gave us a shout out. I had to give them a shout out anyway. So mark that baby down on your calendar. I did see the movie Top Gun. Cory, did you see Ghostbusters, the original?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Did you see the new Ghostbusters that came out?
I have not seen the newest one. I did see the all-female one. It was not as bad as people said, but
I agree. The new Ghostbusters.
Here's the thing. Ghostbusters 1, fantastic. The female-led Ghostbusters, okay. Ghostbusters 2, utter piece of shit.
But if you did like the original, I highly recommend seeing the other one. If you liked Top Gun, go see Top Gun Maverick. That's really all I got to say. I enjoyed it. I did get to a point where I was I hate it when I get this. Something pops me out of the movie. It could be somebody talking. It just could be an event like, oh, and now I suppose this is going to happen. So for a little time there, I was actually predicting what was going on, but I enjoyed it. Plus, I only paid $5 for it. So I know someone like you and Steph don't like Top Gun. Don't bother with this one.
I had one of my friends who went and saw it and absolutely loved it. And then she got home, and her husband were like, well, we should watch the original. And they could not believe how much the original just was terrible.
Oh,
she said
definitely
the first, she hadn't seen it since it came out. She's like, it was unwatchable.
Yeah.
It made no sense whatsoever. I was like, yeah.
No,
we all liked it at the time because it was, oh, cool. This is all sorts of action and stuff flying at the screen. But now we get that all the time, so it doesn't feel as
That's
big.
What was amazing about Top Gun is very little of it was CGI. Everybody flew. Everybody had to know how to work the cameras, how to work the lighting, how to work the controls. Tom put these actors in the planes. So there was very little CGI there. It's all them flying. And so in and of itself, if you could handle watching it, it's amazing for that. But again, my attitude is if you didn't like the original, and I know you didn't, Cory, don't worry about it. Don't waste your time. As far as, okay, let's put it this way. I'm gonna delve into eBay just a little bit because, as you know, I've been watching a lot of stuff. I've been trying to read a lot of stuff. I broke open War of the Realms omnibus, and I read like the first 4 issues of War of the Realms, and I quit, and I went to read all the crossovers. And oh, wow, it felt like a war. I'm not even through it yet. First of all, it's hard to balance the omnibus on a hernia scar, but just a lot of reading and different tones, different styles. Some of it's directly tied in, some of it isn't. By the time you get to it, they always say, okay, we defeated the Huntress down and whatever. Well, there's a whole miniseries that deals with that. So, and then as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to go back and read the last 2 issues, and then I'm going to finish the complete Jason Aaron, I think volume 4 or 5. Because again, same thing. I read all the Thor issues up until the War of the Realms, reading War of the Realms, and then I'm going to read the finale. So, but I was buying lots of stuff. Oh, the other thing I want to mention, there is a gentleman by the name of, wait, come on, did you put your name on it? Brandon John. He gave me a preview comic of a full-size comic book he's working on for 2022. And it's called Nut in the N-U-T. Or is it Hut? It's hard to tell on the preview, but it's basically the story of an old curmudgeon and what he's going to, Nut. It was Nut because, the guy drags his ass home and he finds an eviction notice and sits on the couch. And last thing he's like, whoa! And that was just a 4-page preview. But Brandon, I think he's an old employee of Granite City Comics, and he was out pushing it. And I told him I'd give him a yell. If you want to follow more, go to Instagram at Brandon _of _John for Instagram for prints and updates. I'll definitely be talking more about this as it comes along. But if you're near Granite City or you want to give Brandon a call, tell him you heard about it. The first 3-4 pages actually look pretty cool. So, and I love independent comics, especially if it's someone I know. So I'll definitely check that out. But he gave me that. I've been spending lots of money, even though I'm not. Some of it are things, like I finally, we picked, did you and I talk about Giant Size X-Men Thunderbird that Nyla Rose did?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I reread that. You gotta go get it. It's fantastic. But, I get bored. I tend to start buying things. Like I bought Nightman vs. Wolverine #0, which was double signed, even though J.R. Jr. did the cover. He's not the one who signed it. It was actually signed by, let's see, what's that? Kyle Holtz and Steve Englehart. So, and I have a lot of Ultraverse in my collection. I know I have this, but I don't know if I have the signed one. So I bought a couple die casts, some really old stuff from the 70s. Do you remember the MASH Army trucks, Cory?
Yes.
Yeah, I got one from Z Diecast, who did all sorts of them based on Emergency, SWAT, the Rookies. Really, really bad. And then later on in the 80s, they went over to Tough Wheels. Equally bad plastic, but all Matchbox size. I bought them mostly because the first one has a picture of it. Let's see, you've got you got Hawkeye, Potter, Frank, and Loretta. The second one's got, let's see, who's on now. It's just photo cards on it, and this one's got BJ on it. It's got Charles or Father McCahey, Charles Klinger. So just different ages, just different fun things. I mean, I'm not opening them. I just bought them just for nostalgia's sake. I found a cheap copy of 8 Arms to Hold You by Veruca Salt, a band big in the 90s who apparently I'm just discovering today. I did go crazy with one thing. I did buy a Batman 500 triple sign by Jim Aparo, Terry Austin, and Doug Mink. And it was expensive. Let's see. Oh, Cory, I know I kept asking you over and over and over, but I finally got the soundbar you recommended I buy off of Amazon. Showed up today. Oh, we got our first air fryer. Haven't used it yet, but I got it. Oh, and I also got this thing I saw on gadgetguy.com, or the Gadget Guy. Not the Australian guy, but there's an American guy called, I think it's called Bite Off or Bite Gone or something. a little pen-sized thing that heats up to like 120 degrees. You press it on a mosquito bite for like 4 to 5 seconds, and it stops the itch. Have not tested it yet, but I'm pretty sure, because this is Minnesota, we will be testing it. Sadly. And that doesn't even count some of the other stuff I got in mail call. Like I got my second issue of Gutter Hunter. That's that magazine from a gentleman up in Canada. Google Gutter Hunter, where he goes, it's the adults only guide to history's wildest independent comics. And the first one I had, I raved about. I got the second one. I haven't gotten to read it yet because I'm still reading War of the Realms, for God's sakes. I had to have my wife lift it. I'm not supposed to lift anything over 10 pounds. Oh, sorry, turning into a freaking. So a lot of whole lot of geeking going on. Oh yeah, we saw the previews. Excited for Buzz Lightyear, excited for the Elvis biop, excited for Thor. There's a few other ones, but as I've got Tuesdays off in the near future, my wife and I will probably be going to a lot of $5 movies. So we'll be talking like we did pre-COVID. I hope COVID doesn't come back. Did you see we're now a rising hotspot? Minnesota is?
Now, you know what the other problem is going to be?
Oh, what's that?
People are using the home tests.
Oh.
So that means they don't need to go to the doctor. So we're not going to have accurate numbers unless it's hospitalizations.
I had to do it before my test, and I've been negative so far. So, knock on wood. Oh, by the way, did I tell you to go buy stuff off my eBay store? I've been adding tons of stuff. I had to redo that. I felt like I shorted you guys. That's okay. I'll talk extra long about it next week. Cory, what you freaking on? I'm sorry, geeking. We always end with geeking.
Mystery Science Theater 3000 in the Gizmoplex is live. They are now putting out movies. They did 3 preview movies, and this week was the first of the regular movies. Now, the preview movies were ones that weren't done yet, so when you watched them, they didn't have the credits, and they might still be edited and things like that. They did Santos movie. Well, the first movie that they've done that is complete and ready to go is Munchies, which I remember being in video stores from the 80s as one of the thousands and thousands of shitty Gremlins knockoffs. But it's back to one of the things that people said they didn't like it at Netflix because it seemed too high tech and it seemed like they'd spent a lot of money on it. It's back to the way it felt when it was on Comedy Central, where everything's kind of rickety and it makes you focus more on the movie and the riffing rather than all the special effects and who's going to be the guest star and stuff like that. But anytime Mystery Science Theater 3000's around, I am a happy, happy human. Comic-wise, there was a new comic from Milestone called Duo, and I didn't read a whole lot about it before it came out, but I read the first issue, and it seems like it is a reboot of the comic they did called Zombie, Xombi, and does it in a unique and interesting way, and I got hooked hard by that first issue. Zombie at Milestone was one of my favorite books, and after reading the first issue, I remember I'm buying everything that John Rosen writes. Everything. This book is almost as good. It's not as deep as Rosen's writing, but it does take the idea from the book Zombie, updates the nanotechnology, and has a really good twist in it. But the book that I was happiest about was I read the first 3 issues of Mark Waid's World's Finest, which is the Batman Superman team up book. But Mark Waid is playing with the whole DC universe. He's got the Doom Patrol in there. He's got Metallo in there. He's got Poison Ivy in there. And it really feels like it's kind of this whirlwind of Mark Waid finally getting to play with the DC universe after so long. And I like it because it's not everything is world shaking, everything is about to No, it's just a good superhero story where there's interesting villains that have interesting things they're doing, and the heroes have to think up ways to stop them. One of the things about DC was DC's stuff under Julie Schwartz was always a puzzle book in my mind, where the hero had to figure out a unique way to stop the villain's plot that usually had to do with science or some sort of inventive puzzle solution. And Mark Waid throws a lot of that in that as well. It's one of the few DC books that is just fun. And I think that was why when Rebirth happened, I was excited, because one of the problems I had with the New 52 is everything was dark and everything was dour and everything was bad and everything was always collapsing. And superheroes can be fun. Yes, the stories can be exciting and you can put your heroes in danger, but there should be an element of fun to it. And that's one of the things about Spider-Man. It always bounced from fun to melodrama, fun, melodrama, fun, melodrama. When the X-Men is at its best, fun and melodrama, fun and melodrama. And the thing with World's Finest, there's not as much melodrama because he really can't do anything with their personal lives, because that's all in their own books. So it's just more fun. And it reminded me a lot of his run on The Flash, where he made The Flash my favorite book at DC in the late 90s, because yes, your hero had a lot of things to overcome, but it wasn't dour and dark and depressing. And I wish we had more books that were just fun. That's kind of why I like the Star Trek series that are on Paramount Plus. They're fun. They're fun to watch. I like the characters. Yes, they get in trouble and they have personal problems and stuff like that, but it's not grim, dark, depressing. We don't need grim, dark, and depressing all the time. We have that enough in this world. One of the things that I hope comes out of the pandemic, because usually when there's stuff going on in the world, it affects our entertainment as almost like an echo effect. I hope that out of the pandemic, people start saying, you know what, our entertainment needs to be fun again. I looked at the fall schedule for the networks. No new comedies. None. Matter of fact, even CBS, I don't much care for their comedies. They cut back an hour of their comedies. NBC, they don't even have comedies in the fall. It's okay. In January, we give limited runs to comedies. ABC, limited runs to comedies. We need more comedy. We need more fun. I was looking at the upcoming movies. There aren't any big comedies coming out at all. I want more fun. That's why I like AEW. AEW, that's my last geeking. One of the things that they did was what they call a shoot work. In that, it's a story that's supposed to be real. There have been rumblings that the wrestler MJF is unhappy with his contract. He's a main event style guy. He's super popular, but he was brought in at the beginning from a federation where he was like the third tier guy in a federation that doesn't even have TV. They're up on YouTube. So he got kind of a standard contract, and he has made himself into a bigger star, and he wants main event money. And there's no way for us to know how much of it is shoot, which is real, and how much of it is a work, which is storyline. But last night on Dynamite, he cut a promo and people who should know better were messaging me, oh my gosh, MJF, I can't believe they're letting him say what he's saying. He must really be off the script. They're going to fire him. Okay, let me explain to you how television works. If somebody's unhappy and is fuming backstage, they're not going to give them a live microphone on their national TV show at a show where the new owners of Warner are in attendance. Anything that goes out over TV is planned. Yes, it was a great promo where he aired all of his grievances and he talked about how unhappy he is. And there's no way they would have let him do that. There's no way they would have given him a live microphone and 10 minutes of TV time to do that if it wasn't planned already. So let's see where it goes. It was a really exciting moment, and it was fun. That's the thing I like about AEW. Every show I watch from AEW is fun. I had to watch Raw about 2 weeks ago. First time I'd watched Raw in a year because the clients at the group home wanted to watch it. And after 20 minutes, it was like, I am so bored and so tired, and there are 2.5 hours left of this show, and it's never going to end. It's just not fun. It's not entertaining. It's just a slog. Then I watched AEW. Every time I watch a AEW show, their hour-long show feels like it's 10 minutes long. Their 2-hour show feels like it's a half hour long. So I am going to be in our geeking. I'm going to be highlighting stuff that's fun. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for almost 2 hours.
I got some hot off the emails. I've been talking to Chris running the comic show in September. He says that Adam Bongard will have a table there, and he'll be answering questions about pressing and cleaning your comic books.
Ooh.
Which is more and more important, especially as people are sending them off to be graded.
And they're allowed.
On the edge we are.
Yeah.
So I got that one for us.
I find it amazing that when I was when I was a Mylar Snuggie, any sort of cleaning and pressing was, that's,
verboten.
You can't do that. We have to mark that even though the book looks meant, because it was cleaned and pressed, it can only be a fine. And now it's like, hey, cleaning and pressing, cool. Are we going to mark it on our CGC? Hell no.
As if they could tell.
Yeah. And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Cory, I always regale you with a lot of dad jokes, but I refuse to tell jokes about circles. They're pointless. The references are always circular in a roundabout sort of way. I miss that noise.
Joe,
Cory?
I used to have a cat, and its name was Cat. Not because that was its name, but because its real name was unpronounceable by the human tongue.
To pronounce it correctly, I would have to rip out your tongue. Cory, hit my music.